Hello everyone, welcome to an algebra tutorial video. We are learning about exponential growth as we're dealing with exponential functions. And just like you probably are already thinking, it's basically when exponential functions are getting bigger, when they are growing. But then we like to call it exponential growth. It's just a popular name that we use in mathematics. And I wanted to take some time to dig into a little bit about what that means. All right, so exponential functions, we've learned we can write them in this form. It's y equals some starting value a, that's also my y-intercept. We're repeatedly multiplying, that's the pattern. It's exponential if it's multiplying over and over again by the same number. And we use an exponent for a variable, which also marks it as an exponential function. And if I write that in function notation form, I can replace y with f of x equals a times b to the x power. So that's an exponential function. That's what we're talking about. Starting value a, multiplying over and over to get our pattern. And let me jot some things down so we know a is the starting value. And it's the y-intercept. And I know that b, it's the base, we call that the base of our function, or it is what we're repeatedly multiplying by. Okay, so here's my question. What happens to a number if exponential functions involve multiplication? My question, I'm going to make it in pink here because pink is awesome. What happens when we multiply a number by 1? A number by 1. So for example, if I take 8 and multiply it by 1, well, that just equal to 8, right? If I take negative 302 times 1, that equals negative 302. If I take x, even though I don't know what x is, if I multiply it by 1, that just equals x. Multiplying by a number by 1 is probably one of the most boring mathematical things we have. It doesn't change anything. Multiplying by a number by 1 keeps it the same. So that's sort of the marker. If I want to make 8 bigger, I need to multiply it by a number bigger than 1. If I want to make negative 302 greater in terms of its magnitude, I need to multiply it by a number bigger than 1. So growth, exponential growth, I'm going to write that in green. Exponential growth occurs or happens when our value for b, our base, or what we're repeatedly multiplying by, this b in our function, when b is greater than 1. That's what has to happen. If b is greater than 1, I got a function that's growing. All right, let's take a look at an example because we like examples here. I'm going to take a function here. Let's do x for a table of values. We're going to make my function f of x equal to starting value of 3, multiplying it by 2. So that's my function right there. Well, if I list out some values, let's go for x equals 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right away, I know this is going to be an exponential growth function because I'm multiplying by 2. 2 is greater than 1, so I should see a pattern of growth. So if I put 0 in for x, that's 3 times 2 to the 0th power, that's just going to be 3. If I put 1 in for x, now I've got 3 times 2 to the 1st, that's going to be 6. If I put 2 in for x, 3 times 2 squared, 2 times 2 squared is 4, so 3 times 2 is 4, is 12. If I put 3 in, that's going to be 24. If I put 4 in, that's going to be 48. Because we're multiplying by 2 over and over again, if I put 5 in, that's going to be 96. And what do we see here? We see growth, right? I am getting bigger, my function's growing. You may say, yep, that's very obvious, but we just got to give a name to things. When you're talking about exponential growth, that's what happens when b is greater than 1. And just for fun here, I've got also the graph, so you can take a look at what the graph of an exponential growth function looks like as well. All right, there's our graph. So what do we notice about this? There's my values right here. So it looks like as x increases, it's growing, 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 growing. We're getting bigger, bigger, and bigger. And anytime it's a growth function, you're going to see this increasing as x gets bigger. You're going to see my y values gets bigger as well. So graphs of exponential functions will look a lot like this. It'll look like it's growing, increasing, getting bigger really fast. You'll see it in the table, you'll see it in the graph, and it's all because our value for b is greater than 1. All right, hopefully that's helpful for you as you're dealing with exponential growth functions.